The first step in overcoming burnout is recognizing that you're prone to it. Because if you don't identify the problem, how are you going to find a solution for it? And I looked up what prone means, and prone means to have a tendency or inclination being likely. And one of the things that I found as a common factor for those that are prone to burnout is that they refuse to change.
Mm-hmm.
See, they have a system, they have a way of thinking that they're committed to, especially when it doesn't work. Why can I say especially when it doesn't work? Because they're prone to burnout. Meaning it's very likely that burnout is going to happen again. And so they are doing the same things over and over and over again because they have their way of thinking or they have their system in place. Right. So if you're going to avoid burnout, you have to be willing to change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know I need to take some time off, but I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to be willing to do something different. Yeah, I need to establish some healthy boundaries, but I never make them. Right? Yeah, I need to do something differently, but it goes back to that's not my routine. So if you recognize that you're prone to being or prone to burnout, or it's very likely that you will have another cycle of burnout, obviously you're doing something that is repeated that is causing this. So congratulations, you recognize that you're prone to burnout, but now you also have to recognize why you're prone to burnout. See, if you can recognize those things, why you're prone to burnout, then you can start addressing those and changing those things. This is a really cool scripture verse, but it's in Ecclesiastes 10:10. If the axe is dull and he does not sharpen its edge, then he must exert more strength, but wisdom to sharpen the axe helps him succeed with less effort. See, sometimes it's not just changing everything altogether, but it's just sharpening your axe to do it in a more effective way. Mm-hmm. See, a lot of times we can be so romanticized by our passion, and we're, if you're passionate for something, you will cut down a whole forest with a dull axe. That is no fun, right? But if you have wisdom to sharpen the axe, yes, you're still cutting down the forest, but it's done with less effort.
Yeah.
Hey, and if you've ever cut down a tree, either with a dull axe or a sharp axe, it's still a lot of work. So
yeah.
I think going back to your question, the whole conversation on questions would be very good at this point in time. What am I doing? What practice do I have? What thought process? What expectation am I putting on myself that is unreasonable, that is causing me to come to a place of burnout?
Well, if you're saying, I always find myself in this place, well, it could be a repeated action that is happening.
Mm-hmm. And so what am I doing?
I'm probably misquoting it, but I think John Maxwell said, if you don't change where you're going, you're going to end up where you're going, or something like that. Like, if you keep on doing what you're going to do, you're going to end up where you're going. Mm-hmm, and so that's what I was talking about, burnout. If you're prone to it, there's probably something that you continually do that is causing you to get to this point. So if you can not only recognize that you're prone to burnout, but you can recognize why you're prone, then you can actually address that thing and actually change a thing. Like I said, yeah, I know I need to take time off, but I don't. Well, if that's the reason that you're kind of always prone for burnout, maybe changing that one thing and forcing yourself to change that behavior. And I believe you would be less likely to fall into that cycle of burnout.
Or maybe say, why do I feel this? Well, when I was a kid, my acceptance came from working 60-hour weeks, and, I started working when I was 14 and we were putting in 60 hours a week or 40 hours a week and going to school, and I was doing all this. So they believed what generated value in them was to work that much. So now they're getting burned out because they never take any time off. Mm-hmm. hey, I kind of lived there. I grew up in a very work-driven environment. I'm still a hard worker. And so I have to recognize sometimes I can be putting a workload on myself because that's my habit. I feel lazy if I'm not working. Now, this is not now, but that was a huge belief inside of me that if I'm not working, then I'm being lazy. And so I think when you ask the question, why? Well, I've been doing this since I was 11 years old. No wonder I think this way. And then really, isn't that repentance? Changing the way we think. And when we change the way we think, then we change what we do. And when we change what we do, we're going to get a different outcome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we have to say, what is our story in this? If I'm burned out, there's a story or a narrative I have that is positioning me to get burned out.
Yeah.
So if I can discover the story that I created, now I can rewrite that story, as it were, and have a different end result. So I can still do the same things, but I'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now.
That's, to me, I always look at the story, like, what story am I telling myself?
Yeah.
And, where's it coming from? Is it true? And so even what you were saying, just even recently, I started asking myself, because feeling like on the verge of burnout of, okay, so I am feeling all of these expectations of, I got to do this, got to get this done, deadlines, all this stuff. And I started just asking myself, okay, what is someone else expecting this of me? Or if I'm really honest with myself, am I expecting this of me? And just that perspective shift.
Yeah.
And then I could trace it back. There's a story there that goes back to my childhood. But I just started asking myself, okay, this is the story that I live by. And so if I really get honest with myself, what expectation is real? We all do have things that we have to get done for other people or, your job or whatever, your family. But a lot of the times there's just so much expectation that we put on ourselves, so much extra pressure. And so when I'm able to just think from that perspective, it takes a lot of that pressure off my shoulders because I can just say, okay, realistically speaking, if I actually look at this with clarity, I am putting all this pressure on myself that is my own doing. So then I can kind of strip those things away. And I have gotten a lot better in some of these areas. Like, Costco has become my best friend because I used to think that everything had to be homemade and everything has to look super professional and Pinterest worthy. And then I just realized that Costco makes a really great chocolate cake and it looks good and it's not that expensive and everyone loves it. And so if I have to take something, I used to be like, when am I going to bake a cake? And now I just think,
is that the tall chocolate
I
cake?
yes, the
think
really
about
light. It's
baking a
so
cake.
good.
I
Or
know.
if somebody has a baby and they need a meal, Costco makes these great prepackaged meals that people can pop in the freezer or the oven. And that pressure is off. So it's just those little things that used to be self propelled expectations to be something that they didn't need to be, or they could be done a lot simpler. And that takes a lot of pressure off. And then speaking of what you were saying, Joel, is the change. So, I was upfront, I'm prone to burnout in the beginning of this question, but I had to realize my story has always been, well, it's easier if I just do it myself. And because I'm a very autonomous, independent person, I can get it done, but it's not healthy all the time for me to just do that. And so, I would always be like, well, I probably should ask for help. No, it'll just be easier to do it myself. So it just continued down that narrative and that pattern of behavior of just doing it myself. And I have had to come, and I'm still learning to come to that place that I actually have really capable, qualified, awesome people around me. And I need to ask them to bring their best to the table. And the thing is, I remember, this has been a long time, but I remember being so burned out at this one week. And I was so mad at you, Joel, I was unloading my car and I was like, why is nobody helping me? I was getting so frustrated, so mad. And then it just occurred to me that I had never asked for help. And I think I did ask for help, immediately. You were like, oh yeah, sure. And you came and helped me unload the car. And a lot of times it's just those moments of realizing that it's self-inflicted. and that you do have to actually change your behavior to achieve different results.
And now you're impacting the world or your relationships so much better because now they're a part of your life and people are being fulfilled because they're able to contribute.
Yeah.
Now we've got a beautiful community rather than you doing it all yourself.
Yeah. And it's something I've had to learn though. And I'm still having to learn and I'll be like 100% honest. Sometimes it does create different issues.
Sure.
Because now you're bringing other people into it. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, even though my knee-jerk reaction is, I should have just did it myself. But that's not the truth. That's just an old story that I've lived by. And so now I am seeing, there are some things that we have to work out, but it's actually good and it's actually beneficial, not just for me, but for the whole.
Yep.
Is the mess that the person brings worse than the burnout that you experience?
Yeah. And that's just what you have to kind of decide.
Yeah. It was something that I said before in probably another podcast, but if you don't like the harvest that you're reaping, you got to change the seeds that you sow.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it is when we're talking about burnout. If you don't like the harvest of burnout, you got to change the seeds that you're sowing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, you had to ask for help. You had to do something a little different than a lot of times people, they should just know, right? They should just know.
I've learned that lesson the hard way.